What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another edition of Tuesdays with Turbo. I hope everyone's having a fantastic Tuesday as we roll into this holiday weekend. And in this week, we're going to be talking about something that could be very prevalent this weekend. We're going to be talking about boats. We're going to be talking about toys. And is it better to have them on their own policy, or is it better to have them on your home policy? We're going to get into that as well as some other stuff. But before we do, I want to introduce myself. My name is Ryan Turbo Jackson. I am your insurance resource. And in videos like this, I like to kind of educate folks on their home policy, whether you need an additional policy, or better yet, just let you know what you're buying and what it covers and what it doesn't. And like I mentioned, Memorial Day weekend coming up this weekend, which is always the kind of the unofficial start to summer. So I figured what a better time than to get this video out there. I know we've talked about it in the past, but this is going to be kind of a refresher as we do head into this weekend. But yeah, let's get started. Let's get into it. Let's get popping. First and foremost, this is going to be extremely company dependent. Some companies will allow us to put your boat and toys on the home policy. Some of them require a whole separate policy. So kind of take this with a grain of salt. And if you have any questions, either reach out to me or your agent, and they'll be able to help you through this a little bit more fully. But let's take a step back and see what exactly is a toy. Now, boats, pretty self-explanatory. But even with boats, I mean, we can have inboards, we can have outboards, we can have speedboats, we can have pontoons, we can have fishing boats, we can have sailboats, we can have personal watercraft. So it is kind of, even though we all kind of know what a boat is, it does, kind of paint a broad picture when we use the word boat. Now, what about toys? Now, toys can be anything from side-by-sides to golf carts to four-wheelers to snowmobiles. So that's a little bit more vast. And keep in mind, when we are talking about toys, we are talking about off-road use only. I've said it many times in the past. If you are driving your golf cart or any off-road toy for on-road use, you better make sure you have the right coverage, because most companies out there will not insure such toys for on-road use. So keep that in mind. All of these toys are to be used on your premise, or you take them someplace on a trailer, not to be used for on-road use. So now that we kind of have an idea of what type of things we're talking about, and I always get the question, well, what can I, as far as toys go, what can I put on my home policy and what can't I? A good rule of thumb is if you have to register it with the state, it's always a good idea to it's at that point we might want to look at getting it its own policy. But like I said, it's very company independent, and a lot of times it comes down to just your choice. Now, let's look at if we are able to add the boat or toys to your home policy with a company such as homeowners. Now, with that, there are some pros and there are some cons. Let's talk about the pros first. The pros is that it's one policy. You don't have multiple policies, home, a boat, your side-by-side or golf cart. We can put those all on one policy, which makes it easier for you because there's only one bill. And probably the best part is if you do mortgage or escrow your insurance into your mortgage payment, that you don't have to worry about anything being late, because the mortgage company's paying that policy for you. So it's one of those out of sight, out of mind things. You keep paying your mortgage, your insurance gets paid, and under that home policy lies your boats and or toys. So you never have to worry about coverage being lost there. So that's a huge bonus as far as just kind of bookkeeping goes. Like I said, I've said in the past that a home policy is with some companies that allow it, can be a very deep and you can be a complex policy. So if you are able to take advantage of it, might as well. Might as well. Now, what are some of the cons? Well, some of the cons, like I said, bookkeeping wise, instead of one policy, you have multiple. So the likelihood of, you forgetting to pay it, or just not keeping up on it, that tends to go up the more policies you have. So kind of keep that in mind. And the biggest difference is when these toys are listed on a home policy, it shares the liability coming from that home policy. So say for instance you have a $500,000 liability coverage on your home. Well, that liability coverage is going to extend to those boats and or toys. And on that home policy, we can list, if you have a lender for it, no big deal. We can set comp and collision deductibles similar to your vehicle, no big deal. But like I said, it kind of stretches that liability coverage a little thin as compared to if it has its own on its own policy. So that's as far as like the technicality is concerned, that's the big difference. The more things that you list on your home policy, the thinner that liability coverage is, just because there's more risk involved. Whereas if everything has its own policy, it's going to have its own limit of liability, so it's not drawing or tapping into the liability on your home policy. Another con is that if there is if there's a claim, now let's take a step back and kind of look at this from 5,000 feet. Okay, we have your home policy, which is going to be the more expensive policy as compared to like a boat policy or a golf cart policy. So let's say your home policy is $1,000 a year and a boat policy is $150 a year. And something happens and we need to file a claim on the boat. Now, if the boat is under the home policy, it uses we have your deductibles listed there. That will take away your claims-free discount on the home, which is a percentage. So let's say it's 10%. 10% of 1,000 is going to be $100. So your premium is going to go up $100 a year for probably 3 years until that claim falls off. Whereas if it's $150 to have it on its own, that same 10% is $15. So those are the two major things you want to think about when we are talking about, can we just list it on my home policy, or can we or should we list it individually on its own policy, mind you. So there's no right or wrong answer. I have a lot of folks that are like, you know what, I don't want to touch my home policy if there is a claim because of a boat or toy. I want them on their own policy so that if there is a claim, that claims-free discount being removed, the percentages or the cost of that is a whole heck of a lot cheaper than keeping it on the home policy. But on the flip side, if we do add a boat or toy to your home policy, the price is usually very, very, it is, I'm not going to say substantially less, but it is less compared to a standalone policy, just because you're paying for liability again. So is there a right answer? Is there a wrong answer? There really isn't. It's all about what you want to do. And as far as an agent, what I would suggest, I could go either way. I've worked with companies that you have to have toys and boats on standalone policies, and I've worked with companies like auto owners that, you know what, just add it to it. So, and one other caveat when it does come to either policy is if it is a boat or toy and you are adding it, and you don't have, or whether it's a standalone policy or on your home policy, make sure you have your driver's license number handy, because we do need to add operators to said boat or toy, and they will run a motor vehicle report. So kind of keep that in mind. So like I said, is there a right answer? pretty much both. And when I started out this video, it's like, all right, yeah, this is extremely company dependent. If the company you're with doesn't allow it, then you really don't have a choice. But if your company does allow it, there are a whole lot of cons and a whole lot of pros. You just have to, which one outweighs which. And personally, for me, and this is for me and my family, I would much rather just put it on my home policy, out of sight, out of mind. We pay our mortgage every month. That will always be paid. It will never be late, and don't have to worry about canceling or it being canceled because of non-pay. And then you go through the whole rigmarole of, all right, well, I forgot to pay it, and now I need it because something happened, but I don't have a policy, and you're kind of up, you know what. So bookkeeping wise, easy peasy, mortgage pays for it, or your mortgage pays for it. Everything's built into one. Everything is nice, everything is happy. But like I said, for as many people that do that, I know just as many people, even within our agency, that like them individually. Now, when I say individually, I'm not saying, there are some companies that if you have multiple, golf carts, side by sides, whatever, those all can be, let's say you have 5 of them, those can all be on one policy. Not each individual toy needs to be its own separate policy. If you have multiple boats, same thing. So kind of keep that in mind. And like I said, this is a very timely video because we are, where we live, we're right in between 3 or 4 lakes, so our road has been just swamped with people putting their boats in. So I figured, you know what, might as well make this video so that going into the weekend you can be as safe and secure as possible, because like I said, the unofficial start of summer, even though looking outside it looks more like fall right now. But the weather going to this weekend looks like it's going to be sunny, a little cooler, but if you are getting out into the yard to continue some of that spring cleaning and or getting your garden or any of your plants set, you should be able to do that with no problem and not sweat your what's off. So everyone have a great week. Stay safe this weekend. Have fun, and I will see you next time.